in 1 second after I'm done. And our panelists, Marilyn Minter, Xaviera Simmons, and Natalie White. Jerry is a man who needs no introduction. He is a world-renowned voice in the art world with a CV that includes senior art critic for New York Magazine, the recipient of the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for Criticism, and author of the upcoming book, How to Be an Artist. He is also the originator of the catchphrase, criticism never sleeps, and one of the world's most interesting follows on Instagram. Marilyn Minter is a painter, photographer, and video artist who exhibits internationally. In addition to creating work that consistently challenges conventional definitions of beauty, Marilyn has a long history of political activism, most recently with the nonprofit Downtown for Democracy. Lately, she has also been exploring the erased sexuality of women in the canon of art history. Xaviera Simmons' work centers on photography and includes performance, choreography, video, sound, painting, sculpture, and installation. Her practice is rooted in shifting definitions of landscape, character development, art, political, and social histories. Xaviera will be a teaching artist and fellow at Harvard University, while currently is an Imagining Justice Fellow for the Art for Justice Fund, founded by Agnes Gund. Finally, last but not least, four-time Playboy subject Natalie White is a visual artist and equal rights amendment activist. Prior to exhibiting her work, Natalie was a fine art model for male artists including Chuck Close, Will Cotton, Peter Beard, and George Condo. In 2012, Natalie decided to become her own muse, deriving methodologies from these male artists to develop an artistic practice that would more intimately capture her own likeness in series such as double-exposed giant Polaroids of her making love to herself. You can see a lot of the work around me. Her other bodies of work include performance art and flag-based political work. So that is plenty from me. Without further ado, I give you Jerry Saltz and our panelists.
Testing 1, 2. Thank you for coming out to Playboy today. How many of you are artists in this room? Love you. Do you notice a lot of them just sit together like they can smell each other? It's a pheromonal thing. It's a huge honor to be here. Let me just say, I'm in awe of the three artists on the couch. All three, and this is embarrassing and we're going to get into this, all three have made art that shocked me. Maybe it didn't shock you, but as an older person, you too will be old one day and not know how to do anything on your new phones that are embedded behind your ear. Their work has shocked me and awed me about their radical vulnerability, the beauty of the kind of power that they were putting right out there. And so I'm not going to say much more about that. I want to let them speak for themselves. I'm going to just give you the background radiation of what brought you here, them here, me here, where we are, none of which I really have to tell you. Hey, Andrea. Good artist right there. 36 hours ago, the President of the United States was charged in an extraordinarily credible manner that will be on the cover of New York Magazine, mine, tomorrow by what's her name? E. Jean Carroll, a tremendous writer, the vice columnist for Elle magazine, who was actually raped by the president. Hey, Susan, great colorist. Raped by the president 23 years ago. There was penetration. He already has denied it, and I'm thrilled to say called the New York Magazine, the failing New York Magazine. Yes. It's huge. I want to sell advertising of this way. So That's already happened. What else has happened? In the very, very close up, right now the world is changing. We all know that. Wheels are in spin, batons are being passed, something is happening. Time's up is more than just an expression. It's almost the energy. Time's up is an energy, it's a creative energy. Just as destruction is an energy, it's a creative energy. So we're doing whatever we can do to destroy something and make something, to forget something forever and let it go. Right now at the Whitney Biennial, there are more than 50% of women in the show. There are more than 50% of artists of color in the show. And do you know what? Obviously, letting women be in the show by 50% doesn't make art die. In fact, it seemed to make it better. Women have always been 51% of the population. In the near past, when MoMA opened up in 2004, November 11th, I counted all the works on exhibit, 306. What percent were women artists? 3. And I really had to squeeze that, to not have it be 1 or 2, to let a lot of small prints count. Has that changed much over the time? Yes, because these batons have been passed by the insistence of all of you, and I'm just about done. The insistence of all of you to not remember history the way they want us to remember it. Forgetting is a force. Forgetting can be a creative force. So if we, look, when climate change comes, there goes the day I ruined it. And in about 35, 40 years, they have to take all the art in all the museums and put it in a salt mine for about 400 or 500 years until they can bring it up and we see what was art in the 21st century and all the centuries before. What I'm hoping is that what you all will accomplish is getting enough artists of color, queer artists, women artists, loser old men artists, what loser old women artists, I do not care, into these museums, and a lot of the mediocre white male artists that have been there and that are, we could get rid of Hans Hofmann. No, really. I think that the Brooklyn Museum could cancel the Cause show. Sean Scully. All of you, even if you are a mediocre artist, you deserve a career as strong.
Don't point to me.
Okay.
Mediocre.
Jerry got in trouble already. Excuse me. The point is, we have to change this, and here's the great news. Museums are in advance of everything right now with the market of all things, this hated market. Look at the prices for women and artists of color. They're going up. And you might go, oh, that's tokenism? Like I give a shit. Like I care why you're getting much, much more money for your mediocre work. Because he and I always have. So let me tell you about the shock I've had and try to open this up as a panel, and then I'm going to try to shut up and stop mansplaining. As an older boomer, look, never mind. Don't hate me. I hate you. No. I'm just nervous. As an older boomer, when I see this, when I see Playboy, when I see Marilyn Minter's work, Natalie, where's your work?
Mine's right over there. It's not
Can somebody
really
point at it? Take that ball right over your head, Michael, and point at that great photograph. It's a light. Old people don't know. Who she has
bring it over here?
Yeah.
Just pass it. Can I pass it through? Yeah, pass it through.
Look, as an older man, I'm going to be honest with you. The male gaze is never going to die. And when I look at your work, and your work, I'm not shocked, but yeah, I am turned on. Do you give a shit? And my bigger question to you is, thank you. Thank you, Liz. A great senior editor at Playboy, the new Playboy, first trans playmate ever. And that's a self-portrait of you, Natalie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a double exposed self-portrait.
That you made of you
That I
looking
made of me.
and not looking.
Exactly.
Looking away, sidelong glance.
And I did some of me making love to myself as well.
Okay, so we have 2 out of 2 in a way. And Marilyn, this woman looks pretty pleased.
Well, they're
What's going on? Are you challenging my male gaze? Do you care? What's going on? And let's start.
The women are grooming themselves. Have you ever noticed art history has a lot of women grooming themselves?
No, but yes, now.
Think
Forever.
about it. Think about it. They're always, the first one was George Latour, a woman picking off her fleas. And all through art history, women, this is a way to present women to the male gaze, which is, a part of our cultural history. And I just thought I'd like to show 21st century bathers.
Bathers.
Yeah,
One of the oldest themes in all of art.
exactly.
And is it meant to pleasure in? Do you want to challenge any gaze?
The male gaze is going to be constant, just like you said, but the women can also have some autonomy in how they want to be portrayed.
And what does autonomy mean, Marilyn?
There's a word I can't think of right now that is just portraying themselves. The way, like, it's always like on a platter for your perusal. These are women that are, good looking, tattooed, and another way to present them is this shower scene where you can see 21st century because there were no showers.
Yeah.
And so it was just women grooming with autonomy. That's the only thing that really is different.
Right.
And I'm not like presenting their nipples as softcore porn. I'm presenting them as, happily grooming. And there's very few women who paint other women grooming. Very few men nowadays dare to do it too. John Curran's one of them.
Right. We met, the dudes are afraid, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Xaviera, you seem to have a similar position, but what's going on that you're thinking?
No, just listening to Marilyn, I was thinking a lot about how I grew up, which I actually grew up in a really, now that I think in retrospect, it was very free. Like in this, and I think it's very abnormal. My mom had, I'm named after a former madam, like Xaviera Hollander, she wrote a book called The Happy Hooker. So this is like, for me, sensuality, my mom had lesbian lovers, there was dildos around. She took me to this really crazy place called The Secret Garden, that was for women when I was like 10.
Where was this?
It was it was near the Steinway store on 50s.
In New York.
Yeah. So for me, this kind of pleasuring of the self is just as kind of important as even some of the political works that I produce. It's all a part of a continuum, but that's just because of my own personal narrative of having comfort with sexuality to the point where I'm probably a boring lay. You know what I mean? Because it's always been there for me. I think if you ask my husband, he might say that. Oh God, this is gonna be online.
Mr. Simmons.
Well, his name's not Simmons, but anyway, thank God.
Natalie?
Yeah.
You too are, there's self-pleasure here.
Right.
Representation.
Well, I started making artwork by being the subject and the muse to a lot of artists,
Like who?
like Peter Beard, George Condo. The $6.1 million George Condo was a painting of me.
And how much did you get?
0.
Boom.
And But you know, Will Cotton did a lot of works of me, and so by me taking the photos of myself, I, you know, was like retaking back my own image because I was the subject of.
Oh, I actually don't know where my image
I
went.
thought that was Natalie.
I think that it's somewhere.
Okay. You
Back
should-
here.
Yeah.
So I was, you know, like it was almost like I was taking back my own image, and you know, when I thought about, you know, making my own work, I thought, you know, well, what am I going to make work of? Because I had been working with all of these male artists for so long. And then I thought, well, I don't really have any money to pay a model, so why not just use me? And you know, if I'm good enough for them, I'm good enough for me.
Right.
And then so I thought, well, it's kind of narcissistic to just keep on doing self-portraits. And I thought, well, why don't we just take that to the next level? And with the narcissism, and to just, you know, double expose giant Polaroids of me making love to myself.
Right. When you say making love to myself, do you want to explain to them, or is that self-evident? Because they're not as explicit as what you're indicating.
Right, exactly. They're not pornographic at all. At least in my own view, they aren't. What I would do is I would set up the giant Polaroid camera, and I would lay down in the first position and make an exposure, and then instead of pulling it out of the camera, the film out of the camera, I would just leave it in the camera, change the lighting, and then get into a position that would be on my former self. So that's
Wow.
what I mean by me making.
I get that. Yeah. Xaviera, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, I was happily listening. I can just add that for me though, especially in terms of this image in particular, this is actually tied to a series of images where I've had men, you know, masturbating or like pleasuring themselves to objects. Like I'm interested in like the other forms of pleasure you can receive, rather than just like a human pleasure. Like there's also the pleasure of objects that, you know, like a fetish symbol can be a very erotic thing, or like you know, an image of a landscape really for me can become very erotic if you let it be. You have to let language and image take over you. I mean, and yeah, flowers can be erotic, and it's all a conversation.
This will be a mystery too. As a male, this is of great mystery to me, but don't yell at me for that. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think
And
it's all a
this says
conversation.
Olympia. One of the most famous nudes in all of art is a very, very chalk white woman painted by Edouard Manet in 1860 something. And she is being served flowers by a very black servant.
But let me
we
break.
assume.
But let me break this down further for you. That cat. Since you focused on that, right? And I can say you focused on the whitest thing, right? In the space, because basically.
For sure.
Because when you go past that, this cap for me is very reminiscent of Marvin Gaye. The t-shirt is actually from a James Brown t-shirt. You have like a West African kind of symbol, and the bracelet, and then this textile is like an indigenous Mexican textile from 1950s. So I mean, you know, it's interesting that you know your focus was there, but
It wasn't
really,
here, it was there.
No, I know, but really for me, the ingredients, the most important ingredients, actually I didn't even know it said the Olympia, because I was really focused on James Brown and Marvin Gaye and thinking of that pleasure.
So amazing, because where there didn't look like a critique of, say, my vision or male vision or older vision or white vision, you actually are challenging it with a set of references that simply I fucking missed. And that's rough for me to hear, and a new thing.
Yeah, I think you have to be open to having these conversations and being vulnerable to missing the narrative, so that then you can have a moment to get deeper in, because, you know, as women, but then also obviously I'm a colored woman. I'm particularly, Marilyn knows what I'm gonna say. You know, particularly being a descendant of slaves in America, like I'm really, you know, that's the whole weight of me. That is the most significant thing of my life. Not that I'm a woman in my narrative. It's that I'm a descendant of slavery and all of that trickles down to now.
Right. Yeah.
Amen.
Natalie's working on something that a lot of us may not have known even doesn't exist, which is the Equal Rights Amendment. Were you aware that that was never passed in your mother's era? And how does that hook into your work, Natalie?
Well, activism and art have always, kind of coincided. And back in 2015, I was doing a performance art piece where I was topless in a plexiglass box for 7 hours a day for
Where?
3 weeks at the Hole. And with two-way
That's on the
traffic on the
Bowery,
Bowery,
between
two-way
First and
traffic. I
Second
was
Street.
right in the window. And the show, I made it about the lack of movement within the women's movement in America. I really didn't know why the women's movement wasn't moving, but I could just feel it. And like the third day of the performance, someone came up to me and they told me the reason why the women's movement wasn't moving was because women didn't have equal rights in the United States Constitution.
Right.
And I was shocked and angry. So I went around asking all of, the educated women around me, did you know that women didn't have equal rights in the United States Constitution? And nobody knew.
Nobody. That's
Nobody
true.
knew. And so I started making my own artwork about the Equal Rights Amendment, and I started Natalie White for Equal Rights. I walked from New York to DC to promote the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. I tagged the United States Capitol building. I was arrested a week later. I represented myself in court and I went all Abby Hoffman style on them. But so thank you. So at the time that I started working on this, no state had ratified the Equal Rights Amendment in 40 years, and we were still 3 states short. So, I got a group. It's really interesting because it's a group of artists coming together to amend the United States Constitution.
Wow.
This is not being spearheaded by lawyers and constitutional experts at Harvard Law School. This is really being pushed forward by artists. So I started flying around to all of these states that hadn't ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. We would start organizing buses and teach the people of these states how to lobby their own state legislators. 2 years after I started working on this, Nevada became the first state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in over 40 years. The following year, Illinois ratified the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yeah.
And thank you. And so now we're only 1 state short of giving men and women, all people of the world, equality of rights under the law, which is really important to you in your lives. The fact that you are not an equal citizen in our United States Constitution is the reason why we have a wage gap. It's the reason why we have to worry every time we go to work. It's the reason why, there's pregnancy discrimination, there's rape kits being, backlogged for decades. That's the reason why. It's because all of these things are a symptom of the core issue that we don't have equal rights in the United States Constitution. So
Thank you.
we're working.
Your information, everybody. I saw this project by walking to work on Canal Street on a damn busy day. Everybody zooming by. She had rented 2 storefronts with no storefront.
Yeah.
And the place was open. Again, back to this radical vulnerability. She was there essentially alone with American flags and her work, taking on all customers.
Right, and we fund a lot of the work that we do in the States by selling my artwork. So
Wow.
it's like each piece is like its own super PAC.
And that's another thing these 3 artists have in common. After it skipped a couple of generations, when money and art slept together in public so profligately that it made lots of artists really rich, and very few of them gave back. Unlike, say, the Jasper Johns generation and many others, all 3 of them, which you don't see it here, are giving back in various ways with their activism and sales and whatnot. What about pushback? What pushback have the three of you had for being explicit, as it were, in your work with sexuality?
Well, there are no politically correct fantasies, you know that, right?
Wow.
And sexuality is not politically correct ever. Do you agree with that?
So much.
In America.
Yeah, and everywhere.
Everywhere.
You know, never been politically correct. And I think it's very frightening to people. It's very frightening for women to own sexual agency. And there's a question that I wanted to pose and talk about with everyone here is, I noticed it because I did hardcore sexual imagery back in the 80s.
1989, you want to tell them what happened?
And I got kicked out of the art world, basically. And excoriating press and got dropped from shows, and my gallery actually closed the show a week early. And I was youngish, I was in my late 30s, and now I can do anything. You know, I can do any sexuality. Any images of sexuality, nobody bats an eye. And I wonder what this big thing is about. I watched, my best example is that great picture of Robert Mapplethorpe of Louise Bourgeois holding that giant dildo. And everybody thinks she's adorable.
Yeah.
She's so cute. And I've been witnessing these young women trying to work with sexuality, trying to own the production of it, trying to reclaim it from an abusive history and making images for their own pleasure and amusement. And they get excoriated and slut-shamed by everyone, including other women.
Look at Madonna just this last week.
Just living.
Even if you hate her, she's too, quote, old to be
sexy.
wandering around with an eye patch. Which eye patches are a little weird. But it has nothing to do with gender or age.
And nobody criticizes any of these male rockers and their
That's right.
you know, grabbing their crotches. What the fuck is, you know? Well, maybe Bruce Springsteen. But my point is, there's this, you know, there's this baked-in misogyny in.
Can you all hear her?
Yeah.
There's a baked-in misogyny in allowing women ownership of production of sexual imagery. But why is it I can do it, Judy Bernstein can do it, Betty Thompson, postmenopausal women. They're a little older than me, but we're all, you know, I'm hitting 71 in a couple of weeks.
I can't.
You know.
You see what she's getting at.
Yeah, what's
older women have been given the lane.
Because we
but
can't.
You haven't.
Yeah, you haven't, exactly.
Why?
Well, this is what I want people to start thinking about. It's like, we have to be mindful of why we're criticizing Madonna. We have to be mindful of why we build up Lena Dunham and Taylor Swift and then tear them down.
Bang.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do we
Shoot
do that?
the wounded.
Yeah. And it just makes no sense to me that women can turn on each other so easily.
Right.
And I think it has a lot to do, this is my own personal theory, it has a lot to do with, and I'm not a sociologist or an intellectual, you know, I'm just a stupid painter. But it was like, you know, in my brain I was thinking there's this primal thing about, you know, the cavemen bringing home the biggest buffalo, so the women had to compete with each other for that caveman to produce healthy children. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not existing anymore, you know. This, you know, equality is not a pie, basically.
Right.
And, you know, we can all experience it. And owning your sexuality is no threat to the men that are our allies, and the women and the men that are you know, not examples of toxic masculinity. I think a lot of men just love the fact that women, you know, produce these images. But my question is, why do we turn on them? Why does Miley Cyrus have that big finger at the VMA Awards and get slut-shamed all over the world? You know, when, you know, Justin Timberlake can grab his crotch and mimic black artists all the time.
Right.
You know, Miley like hits a little bit of hip hop in there, and she's like the whore of Babylon. I mean, I'm thinking of her because she's a risk taker. You know, she's one of the only women that worked with. She's the only young woman practically we could get to promote Planned Parenthood.
Is that right?
Before, yeah, we hit all these people and gave them toothpaste.
As younger
Gay
artists,
use.
what do you make of Marilyn's question? Why do people go psychotic? Not on older women artists, but what's going on?
Well, personally, I don't really listen to anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, people have given me a hard time before, and I just don't listen to them. I create whatever I want to create based on how I like it, and if anybody wants to look at it, they can, and if they don't, fuck off, you know.
Amen.
But I think that people give younger women a hard time in general in every single aspect of life, no matter what profession they're in. I think that it's almost like they should just everybody feels like young women should just be really happy to like be there in general. Yeah. And I think that a lot of them have that mentality that they're like, well, I'm just lucky to be here. Oh, I'm just lucky to get paid a salary. Oh my gosh, I could never ask for a promotion. What if my boss fires me? Right. And then they you know, hit the time where they're about to have kids, and then they don't want to challenge. They're afraid to challenge anything, and it's not because they're taught that way, because the society has taught them that they should just be happy to be there. And I think that's unacceptable, and that we should, you know, stand up for our rights and, you know, do whatever we want. And
the internet changed everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, men, I hate speaking for all men in all different ways, but I'm just gonna say this, you guys know, I love you all, but like, I think that men overall as a group tend to, you know it all, want to say that they know it all. And I mean, I know I live with a man, and like, we have this and he's one of the most emotional, sensitive people, but it's a constant, like, he knows, he second guesses me all the time, and I'm intense, so I just basically like, no, and it is exhausting, but I'm so used to just being like, no, I know. I've, like, after 8 years, I've beaten him down, because I'm just like, I will fight with him till the death. But I had, you know, here's the thing in all seriousness, advocacy, yeah, he does. It's a black, but the thing is that I will say advocacy, activism, shifts, they all have to be not rehearsed, but they have to be done consistently. You have, women and men, like, you have to consistently stand up for yourself, and you can go back and retreat and like take a break and take a breath, but we understand the conditions that we're living in. I understand the conditions that I'm living in terms of who I am, and I'm consistent to the point where people basically know what I'm gonna say before I said it. Even when I found out I was on the panel with Marilyn, I was like, she knows what I'm gonna say.
We've been on a lot of
panels. You know, so I think, I think men have to understand that the conditions that have made America the way they are have favored you, and so you're gonna have a lot of women who are gonna talk you down off the ledge because times are shifting, and so we're gonna be a lot more like in your face because we don't want to hear it. Whether you're a gay man, straight man, queer man, it doesn't matter. We're still gonna like, we're gonna give it back. We're gonna go toe to toe with you, because these are the conditions that have made the society the way they are, and we have to advocate for shifts, no matter between the sexes, especially.
Amen. Really.
I think also a lot of women think that there's only one seat at the table for a woman, and so they think that they're all competing for that one seat. And you know, the idea that there might be more than one woman at the table doesn't even strike them. And I think also a lot of times men will state their opinions like it's a stone cold fact, and women will state a fact that they know is a fact as a question.
Up talk, up speak.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a trick that keeps me from, artists are narcissists, we'll all agree to that, right? We're delusional, we're narcissists.
Yeah.
Yay.
Totally self-involved.
I can see all of you here.
And I think writers, all creative people,
Yeah.
And I learned something a while ago, and it's like when I see another good artist, woman especially, I hate her immediately.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see her, I want no another artist in my wheelhouse that I have to think about. And so I just make a case, make a point of, especially if she's really good, of going over and saying, I really love your work.
Yeah.
And by saying, I really love your work, the poison drains. It's
Yes.
Totally.
It actually works. And then all of a sudden, I mean it.
Yeah.
And we're colleagues. And it's
works.
really hard to do it. And it's not my natural inclination. And today we have Twitter and we can retweet. And I make a point of retweeting all
You
the
do.
artists I love. Yeah, because it's not easy. I don't want to do it.
Right?
I want them to disappear,
I have to agree with you. No, I don't really hate. I love most of the artists, my peers and women, but I feel like the same thing that you do, in the sense that, like, whether, even if I don't like their work as much, I'm a woman's woman, and I love men. I love you all. You beautiful.
I retweet a guy
sexy,
too.
everything.
If I like the work, I retweet it.
Yeah, but it's like you gotta get rid of all this jealousy,
Yeah.
especially you gotta get rid of your stuff. Go to the
Jerry
therapist and
says,
deal with it.
Envy is your enemy.
Scream therapy.
I
Is that
said you have to make an enemy
Enemy out of
of
envy.
envy
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight,
you have
and
to
you will
be
find what these
mindful.
artists have found. You actually are no longer in the service of the other. Your eyes are no longer turned out. As much as we hate each other for getting way more attention than us. I know you don't agree with that, but Marilyn,
Mindfulness and opposite behavior.
Yeah.
You do the exact
I
opposite
can't
of what
believe
you
how
want to
being
do.
nice in the art world or your world, how far it will get you. How far love and empathy will get you. Natalie, you and envy, how is it working?
Well, I like what I like. I have no problem. I always say that, when the tide rises, all of the ships rise with it. So, I'm really supportive of the people around me. I help other, young artists get shows. I introduce them to galleries, whether they're
big.
men or women. I feel like I'm only competing against myself because...
You are, amen.
Because
yeah.
I feel like if I keep on making better work and work that I'm proud of, it doesn't matter whether it just sits in my apartment and I get to look at it, or it shows, in a museum or a gallery somewhere.
I can't say that.
What can't you say?
I can't say that. I wish I could.
Could say what?
That I don't care. That I don't care that I don't get attention for what I'm doing. It's too painful.
Fine.
I can't say that.
I think it's attached to the material conditions that you're a part of. However you have to examine what your relationship to money, right? Like, and what material conditions
Money I
you're
don't
comfortable.
care about. What I care about is someone seeing what I have to say and I'm communicating.
Totally.
Yeah, and I don't even, I think money is gravy. But if I'm not paid attention to, it kills me.
So you're
As an artist, I need to have that dialogue that I'm not speaking into a void. I just want to say one quick thing. I do believe this, that artists do get so much pleasure out of making their work. It's almost good enough because you have so much fun doing it, but it's not good enough. It's so much more painful. And I love that the art world loves young bad boys and old ladies. and old black people. They love
That's
young
true,
bad boys.
Well, that's recent.
Yeah. It's always been old ladies.
Yeah, no, but
Young-
the old black people.
Old black people.
Yeah, you're like,
That's brand new. That's brand new. I remember seeing David Hammond's 25 years ago. I thought, why have I never seen this artist anywhere?
Right.
It was like a shock. He's like the best artist live. And I never even saw the work 25 years ago. And I can name tons of artists that I did see that are not even a blip on your screen today.
Well, I think that if everyone decided that I should stop having shows, that would really hurt my life because
Yeah.
then I would have to stop making artwork. But I just don't put as much emphasis personally on, you know, like getting affirmation from other people.
Right. I think that all of us in this room, most people are fine with dancing naked in private at home and kissing their cats and dogs and their maids. Those of us in this room and on this couch and in this chair, and the artist, we're dancing naked in public.
Right.
And if no one is eating our meal, if there is no radio feedback, it can get a little squirrely inside of us. Now, we all form our own gangs. With a big takeaway from this is something that you've all already known. We form a gang and we do not show any light between us, ever. If you don't like my work and I don't like yours, I'll never show that in public. And we protect each other, we protect the runt of the gang because other people think you're the runt. And you can, like these artists are, change the world. It's much, much easier. We get to sit almost at the top of the mainframe of the motherboard right now in different ways. Well, Natalie, you're heading there. Thank God. And we can all attest to nobody knows anything in a funny way, and that you can do whatever you want. And I want to remind you something else about their practices. All of them do anything they want. And they're not just making a small square painting, or just bright color photographs, or just self-pleasuring photos. None of you should do that terrible, terrible thing unless you want to. You can't stop painters. Don't get locked in. You can do anything you want in any way you want. Anything else anybody wants to say before we try to get to some questions?
Please. I agree with you, Jerry, but I think two things really quickly.
I mansplained it.
No. I think it goes back to this. The material conditions is something I think about all the time. And while I do believe in that idea of that you can do whatever you want, I also understand that we all have different material conditions and a relationship to resources and how we can do what it is that we want to do. So I just want to make that clear. And I also think that there's some health in, like, for instance, I was reading some articles about the Whitney Biennial in particular, and I got really frustrated, and I'm not very active on social media, and I got really frustrated, and I had to, express that frustration to the curators and the journalists that I know, and I hope that we have to be able to have healthy dialogues where we disagree with each other.
And what did you tell them?
I said that if you want a radical exhibition, then you have to be a radical writer. You have to have radical curators. You have to create the conditions of radicality in order for us to also do our part. And at the same time, we are pushing through. You know what I mean? It's like, it's an and.
We've had those really painful dialogues.
Yeah.
And we all want to grow and change. You have to have these really painful dialogues.
You have
For
to.
fact. And it is hard. Did the Whitney Biennial fail at being radical, are you saying?
No,
Or were the
I'm not
critics
saying that.
failing at seeing what was radical?
I don't have work in that exhibition, so I'm gonna say that. And I won't say whose criticism I really enjoyed, but there are people who wrote really exuberantly about the exhibition. And then there were people who were very condescending to the artists inside of that exhibition, and the way that they condescended, considering it's a show that's quote unquote the most diverse, was a problem for me. You can't expect black and brown bodies and female bodies to hold all that weight. It's just unfair to do to these artists, and let's leave it there.
She makes a great case.
Yeah. I think with a number of artists, they did push back in public. Most notably,
Simone
Lee, who made a long Instagram post that you should all read. Simone Lee on Instagram.
We love you, Simone, if you're watching.
And she said all of this in real passion. But this kind of passion, to say you can't put all that on us and you actually don't know the references in any of our work. And that's a change. That's a sea change. And you are that change. And people like me are trying to keep up. And is there anybody, if you have a question, I would ask you, to raise your hand. I'll point at you, and here's what I need from you. Usually, and it's male, the psychotics stand up during the Q&A. I will require you, that was the first hand right there, to put it as a question. And keep it simple, silly. And I will get medieval on you if you start to make a statement. Then you can yell at me upstairs, and we're going to all do selfies later if you want them. You'll get into grad school with them. First question.
Did you have any hesitation about appearing here today knowing it was Playboy? Is this what you imagined when you entered into...
I had a lot, but let's ask the artist. I was terrified, and I emailed Liz and everybody saying, "Oh my God." And did you?
No, not at all. I think nudity. I love looking at beautiful women.
But not no male nudity. And why? Don't yell at the questioner.
Isn't there Playgirl? Does Playgirl still exist?
No, it's not as good.
You gotta bring that back. Yeah, we want to see it, and so do some beautiful men. They want to see it too. No, she said no. Okay, oh Lord, I don't know that. Okay, all right, girls. Lady.
I read 2 of them before. I really did read it when I went to Europe. I took it with me, and I thought, this is like the Playboy when I was a kid, which is pathetic, but I was in the Deep South. It's the only liberal magazine I could get at a newsstand.
True.
And
We forget
I have a Playboy that has interviews with Picasso, Ernest Hemingway, and James Baldwin.
Wow.
And that's what they're trying to do. To bring that back. I watched Playboy being one of the best liberal magazines, anti-Vietnam, pro-sexual agency in terms of reproduction,
Right.
Equal rights, but until feminism happened, and then they turned, and I watched them turn.
It turned against Playboy.
Yeah, they turned against feminism, and that was when I started reading Ms. Magazine. But I think this generation is women editors, and I think there's a gay photo editor. I'm not sure. And women and.
Good
I
job.
want women to own their sexuality. I have no problem with
Any
it.
of you nervous that we're here at Playboy? Without lying, we've had to tell the truth.
So I wasn't afraid.
It was only me, the oldest person.
Not me. I'm older.
Shit.
I wasn't afraid at all. I've been in Playboy 4 times. I've been in Playboy 4 times, French Playboy twice, American Playboy twice. I've been to the Playboy Mansion.
I'm crying.
Actually, the only time I was at the Playboy Mansion, it had 0 playmates. It was myself, Daniel Ellsberg, Norman Lear, and John Perry Barlow having a conversation about the First Amendment. So I understand Playboy and how they always have had a history of standing up for equal rights, and in fact, Playboy has published more articles about the Equal Rights Amendment than that I've been in than any other publication I can think of.
Way to go, Playboy. Any reservations?
No, not at all. I was excited, but let me just give this little anecdote. I will say that I use the term Playboy all the time, I realize, because I'll be in slang, like, I'm speaking like this, but at home, I call my husband girl. I'm like, girl, please. And he asked him, he's not here. You know what I mean? It's just a habit, like, because I talk to my girlfriends a lot. But I also say things like, all right, Playboy. Like, it's weird. It's like this kind of, this term that's been in my life my whole life, and I've always seen it in my life, like all the different iterations of the institution. I would call it an institution.
Right.
So yeah, it's amazing, and who doesn't want to be with you all?
Yeah.
Especially my Marilyn. I have to. We're buds.
Next question. Yes, I just saw your hand straight through, and then this woman here after, and then I saw something. Thank you, Bunny.
I want to ask how you handle with the insecurities about being a woman, and how you handle if you ever thought like, oh, my job, like this work is shitty, this art is shitty, it's not gonna work, how I'm gonna do it, how you handle with all these thoughts.
You tell that voice to shut the fuck up.
Yeah!
I wish you could record that, but thank you.
It's really true.
Thank you.
And be fucking delusional.
And tell them every single artist, the most famous artists you know, have that voice.
We all have it.
Everyone has it.
Demons speak to us all.
You're not the only
3:15.
one.
Thank you.
Hi,
Yes.
thank you for being here. My question is, do you feel a responsibility to educate those that are ignorant to the idea of sexual freedom and fluidity? And if so, how do you balance that weight as well as knowing when to ignore it?
Artists, do you have a sense that you want people to understand this, that don't, or that need to, or should?
Always, yeah, always. I really want to have dialogue and change people's minds.
Do you in your work, whatever you do?
I find that a lot of people that, I'm 22 years old as well.
Thank you. When I try to educate some people, I feel kind of like stubborn because I'm very passionate about it. If I find some new information, I want to express it to everybody. When I found out about these events, I wanted everybody to come with me, but there are some of my guy friends specifically that are not open to the idea, but with gradual time, I try to be patient with it, but I also want to know when to just like not waste my energy.
We're teachers, so we have to do that.
It's time, and I also think there's something about, being aggressive and not in like a, damaging way, but there's a push and then there's a pause and a push and a pause, and like you have to like decide how much of the dance you want to have it be pushing, and then when do you want to have a pause, and it's breathing, you know what I mean? Like life is long, life for most of us is at least 100 years, right? Or most. So, you've got time to push, and you've got time to also be like, yo, you know what, I just want to kick it with my friends, and like, I'm good with you over there. Like, you don't want to come, don't come, dude. Like, I'm good. You know what I mean? You gotta play both, and nothing is concrete, right? So you gotta be able to play kind of all of it.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to like educating people about my work, like there are people who have ideas about who I am as a person or about my work that are completely that when they come in, they leave with a completely different idea. So they might come in thinking that I'm like exploiting myself, or that I must be stupid, or that I must be a porn star, that I have no brain, that I'm not intelligent, and then they leave thinking the exact opposite. So, it is kind of about educating people about your work and, stuff like that, and about you as a person.
Yes, sir.
So, Marilyn.
Speak up, please.
Hi, I'm Kevin. This question's for Marilyn. I'm surprised that you didn't speak about your work, Plush. And the reason why I'm surprised that you didn't speak about it is because we talked about, sort of female grooming and the male gaze. And I feel like with this project in particular, you completely fucking flipped it upside down.
Well,
Not only did you flip it upside
do
down.
you know what this is? It's a really big painting of mine, and it's pubic hair. And since it's been erased in art history, totally erased, I thought, okay, I'm going to make pubic hair so beautiful that you can put it in your living room. But the minute people know what it is, they don't buy it. So I have them all stacked up.
I want one.
In about 10 years, I'll show them. I think we'll be ready, right? Because women are now, pubic hair has been erased out of the culture. Totally erased.
Look at Western art history
Yeah.
and find a piece of pubic hair.
I know them all. I know them all.
Males are allowed to have it.
Yeah, oh, they don't, actually, they don't have much either.
I know.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, nobody shaved their arms, and you never even see armpit hair. And then, it's like, it's been erased somehow. It's like too.
Not in Japanese
Yeah.
art. I
No,
want to
exactly
call your
not. It's a
attention
good
to
point.
this.
Good
And
point.
in Eastern art.
Yeah.
But in the West. Any other questions before we end? I see a hand there. Is your name Allison? Did I meet? No. Deborah. Sorry if we're missing you. Again, we'll talk after this.
Thanks. Yeah, you mentioned the male gaze. I'm curious what since you're all, or there's a lot of nudity in your work, and the female form is something that is, so wonderfully represented by female artists. What do we do about this question of the male gaze and sort of separating it from the political structure and problems around it, and just dealing with the images themselves? And can we embrace, work by male artists of the female form without it being cast into this negative
Great
light because it's
question.
the male gaze?
Can men do this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have no problem with men doing work of women nude as well.
I would want the man who's doing it to be able to kind of give me the narrative. I would actually, you know what I mean? And not to say that they'd have to give me the narrative at that moment, but I'm saying they need to be able to sit on this panel and then just justify that for me. Like I'm gonna need to hear something else after that. Because
Yeah.
yes, you can do it, of course, but like, can you finesse the way we're just finessing right now? That's what I want. That's what I want.
Because men have had a free pass for 50,000 years.
Right.
Any other questions before we end? There's a hand rather. Mike?
As well as it's jumping.
The bunny walk is taught.
Thank you. I feel like Marilyn didn't really have a chance to finish her answer about your plush series, and if you could just speculate about why it's been why pubic hair has been erased.
Well, I know historically everyone thinks it's because of prepubescent women, but it's not. It was the models and Playboy has a history of not showing pink, and so pink being vaginas, and so they kept. Yeah, they never did that, but the photographers kept, in other magazines like Hustler, kept trying to show vaginas, and there was that pubic hair in the way all the time. So everyone, it wasn't about, they just kept making, what is it called, the airport thing, strips? Landscape, yeah.
We all know.
We're all.
Big strips.
And then it just became,
She has an airport.
I'm old.
So do I.
And then I met these 21-year-olds who lasered it off forever. And I went, oh God, I remember when I plucked all my eyebrows out, they never grew back. And I thought, okay, dye your pubic hair blue, but don't laser. And then I just said, okay, well, I'm gonna make beautiful pictures of pubic hair, and that's the plush series. And was actually funded by Playboy, and then they saw them and went, oh, we don't want that. So I have all the negatives.
We should publish them in the next. Yeah.
I have.
Okay, look, it's after 5 o'clock.
Always all colors.
We have to stop. You guys, the revolutionary power of women's anger, laughter, rage, everything is in this room with all of us. And I thank Playboy and I thank the artists for being here. And again, really, really, really thank you. You're really brave and you are changing the world. Thank you.